Hello and welcome back. So let's revert our text to a nicer paragraph. I'm going to remove the styling on the block quote like this, save, and let's refresh. Okay, that's much better. Now I want to add a few elements down here to illustrate why we need CSS here. So we have attributes, we have styles, but now we need to look at this thing called cascading style sheets. So this is a version of styling that is more common now than before. So why did we move from doing styling like this and moved to CSS? Now you can, even today we still style things. This is called inline styling because you're styling right inside the item. So inline styling is still something we do. However, for efficiency, we use what is known as CSS. So let's see an example of why we need CSS and what it is. So here I'm going to create a div to start with, and inside this div I will add a couple of more divs right here. So first of all, let me add a first one like this, and what I will do is add some styles to this. Now I have not put any content, so which means I won't be able to see this div, but for me to be able to see it, I want to let's see here. For me to be able to see it, I want to add some styles. So first of all, I'll give it a width of let's just say 150 pixels and a height of 150 pixels. So it's a square image. It's a square, it's just a box, but still, because I can't see it, it doesn't have any colors or anything. I can just see that it's taking up some space, but I can't really see it. So I need to give it a color. Now, if I use color like this, color is for text. So if I say something like blue and I write some text in there, you will see that that text will be blue and not the div itself. So you see some text is blue, but I still can't see the div. So I need background color in order to get that one. So background color, let's call it blue. So I remove the color blue here and just remove the text that is inside here because I just want a solid box. So let's refresh, and there we go, we have that solid box. Let's give it a little margin so that we can tell it apart from other boxes near it. So I'll put just small 10 pixels like that. So this is a margin around the place like this. So this side it will leave some space, this side, and etc, etc. So as you can see, it has moved, pushed everything aside. Now keep in mind that margin, you can also specify specifically if you want to deal with the margin on the top, margin on the left, margin on the right, and margin on the bottom, of course. But here when we just say margin, we mean all four of them. Now an interesting thing happens if, for example, I now duplicate this line a couple of times. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes. So if I now refresh, you see what's happening here. Since the display is block for this thing by default, you see that it's not inline. So this thing goes to the next line, this one goes to the next line. It doesn't do the inline thing. So if I want them to move inline like that, I would have to add something to this. So you see what I'm doing here, I'm holding down Control. Once I click and hold down Control and click somewhere else, I can then type all three places at the same time like this. So this is the power of Sublime Text. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is changing this will be a pain because if I have to select these like so and then put a semicolon, and then I'm just going to say display inline like that. But I want it to maintain its blocky shape, but let's see here what happens. There we go. So the moment I say inline, it all disappears. That's because it's adjusting to the amount of text inside the box. Now, since these boxes have 0 text in there, they've just shrunk to 0 pixels. This is why I can't see them. But if I say inline block like this, inline block is one that maintains the blockiness of it, but still allows it to be viewed in line, meaning that it doesn't take the whole width of that row. So if I say inline block, it's like a combination of both, so it's going to be like this. So they still move to the other side as an inline element, but they maintain their blockiness and they don't follow the content of the box itself. Because if I just had left it on inline like this, I would need to add some text inside each div for me to be able to see it, and it will resize itself according to the text, as you can see here, which is not what I wanted. So better I use inline block like this. Great. So now this is all well and good. Now we only have 5 of these boxes. Now imagine if we had 100 of these boxes, and then you have a client that says, oh, I don't really like this blue, try something lighter, maybe light blue, right? So what will happen here is now I have to go to the background column and then move my cursor over these and try to change this. Okay, I can also select blue just by doing this. Now the problem is there could be some other blues somewhere here for other attributes, and that would be a nightmare to select. So I may end up doing something like this and then just type light blue, something like that. Okay, and there we go, we have a lighter blue. Now the problem with this is that it's not very efficient. First of all, if I have 100 of these divs, all this text is quite a lot, because each one of them will have as many styles as I need for each box, and this could be 100 styles, right? And then I have to copy the same box 100 times. So this is not a very efficient way to do things. There's a better way called CSS. Now what we do with CSS is we just get the same, because we need the same styles for all of these. I'll just get one list of this, cut that out, and then right at the top here, anywhere really, as long as it's before the element you are trying to style. So I'm just going to put a style tag. So it's a whole tag here for styles, like that. Okay, so you don't really need this part, but you can leave it there. You can do it like this, it will still work. So what we do is put this stuff here instead. Okay, I'll put a semicolon at the end, and then I can delete the styling from the rest of these, like so. I'm just holding Control D to select the next available version of that text. Let me remove this as well here. All right, so these divs now are supposed to be married to these styles. So there's styles here, but we want to tell the browser which element to apply these styles to, because they are no longer part of the element itself. Before they were inside here, in the previous a few seconds ago, these styles were inside here, so it was easy for the browser to know what we are talking about because they are right inside the div itself. But like this, now they are separate, so we need a way to tell it that we are talking about these divs here, because just like this, if I try to refresh, I won't see those divs anymore. So what we can do is give them an ID. So we'll say ID is equal to, and then we'll say my div. So you can name this anything. My div is just a text. It can just be A, B, C. It doesn't really matter. Whatever name you want to come up with, that's up to you. Just avoid starting with numbers. Just start with letters. Put underscore a number if you want to add numbers, or just numbers like this. It's better to start with text. So we have my div as an identifier to all of these things here. So now what will happen is if I put my div over here and put all this in curly brackets like so. So I'll open this bracket and put that bracket there like this. So I open and close. That's what it looks like. Then now it knows to look for my div in here. However, this will not work still, because if I refresh now, it doesn't work. Now the reason is that to tell it to look for an ID in particular, I have to put a pound sign, a hash sign there, and then now it will know that I'm talking about an ID of an item somewhere. So anything with this ID is going to have these styles attached to it. So if I now refresh, there you go. Okay, Now the second way to select is not by using the ID, is maybe by using the tag name itself. So to do that, this is a div. So if I remove the hash and I just remain with div and this, it means it's going to style every single div, whether it has this ID or not. So I can remove the IDs like so. So for as long as it's a div, it will have these styles, even this big one here. So any div on this page, even if we had another one at the top here, it will have the same style. So if I refresh, this is what you get. So the first div is here overlaying on top of the other, and then the others are in here. The reason they've moved this way is because the container div is also being applied these settings. So it has shrunk to this width, so they can't really go this way because it's not enough space. So this is not a very precise way of doing things, so I'll undo and leave it on the ID like this. Now there's still one problem with using this method, and that is okay, before we get to that, notice now that the text is less, so we just have one line of styles which is applying to all this. This is awesome. And if I move, because remember in HTML the white space doesn't mean anything, even if I press enter like this, it's just still as good as it's like this. So I can do this instead to make the styles more readable. So if I do that and hit tab key, I can do this to move all styles like that. Okay, and then that, like so. So this is still the same as the way it was in one line. As you can see here, it doesn't disturb anything. Okay, so with that out of the way, so you can put as many styles here as you wish. This is not a very good way of doing things because ID should be unique to one element. Usually that's what it is. Now it's not a must. You can put IDs that are similar the way I've done here, and it won't really be a problem. It's just that sometimes you want an ID that is unique. So let's say I want to be able to identify this div later as a unique entity, and I put 1 there. This becomes a problem because now I can't style this the same with the others, right? Because I'm using the ID to identify this uniquely. This also creates a problem where now it doesn't, C1 has disappeared. It doesn't have those settings anymore because it doesn't follow, it's not the same ID. The way to solve this would be to create another version of this and put the 1 on it so that it also gets the same styles, but this is inefficient. So instead what we do is we change to what is known as a class. So let's change this ID to class instead. So class is much better. Now in order to identify a class, we don't use the pound or hash sign, we use a dot like this. So if I do this and class is equal to my div, you will notice that nothing has changed because it's now looking for a class and it does find a class with my div. Now the beauty of class is that I can put a space here and add another class there, and it won't disturb the ID the way ID was disturbed by just adding a 1 at the end. So like this, as long as I leave a space, this is entirely considered a different class. So this is one class called my div, and another class is this one. Okay, so even with this content here, for as long as there's a space here, it will still adhere to the rules of this one. So if I come back here and refresh, nothing has changed. So which means this another can also be another class like this, and I can tell it to just have a background color that is slightly different, or maybe I want to add a shadow, which is like box shadow, and then you tell it on the x-axis how many pixels the shadow should be offset, and on the y-axis I don't want to offset any of them, and how much blurriness we need. I'll use 10 pixels, and what color do we need there. I'm going to just say gray. So I've just added a shadow to the another class. So whatever item has the word another as a class will have a box shadow. So this is cool because now this div has sources of styling from two different places. In my div, so it will get all of this, but then it will also get from this one, which is here, and get the box shadow. So only one of these will have a shadow, which is that one, right? The others do not. So if I keep moving this another to here, then that one will have a shadow in it, which is this one, like that. So this is awesome because you can have a base class and then you put some variation in different classes and just extend. Now you can put as many as you want here like this. It still won't disturb anything as long as there's a space there to signify that these are different classes. So even with all this, it will still use this and use that, and so you won't see a change here at all. The beauty of this again is that now I still have the ID to use here. So I can now have ID is equal to, and then put different numbers here to identify these items uniquely, like this, while still maintaining the styling here with a single class, while these are uniquely identifiable now. Okay, so these are the advantages of using classes instead of IDs. And then the advantage of using CSS like this is because you reduce the amount of styles you have to type, because just one can be used to style a lot of things. This is why they're called cascading style sheets. They cascade. You can use them to style. If I style this, it moves down to these guys in here. They'll get the same styles and so on and so forth. So it works really well. Now, this is not the only way to do styles. You can also create an external file of a style. So the same way we've done styles in here, instead we can put these styles in a different file. So say new file here, and then we'll cut these out, and then right here I will paste like so and save this file. So this one I'm going to just save it as main. You can name it anything you want. I'll just say style.css. The .css is important, so make sure you are on all files here when saving, and then .css and save. So now, as you can see in here, I can put some styles in here without having to put the style tag like this, because we are already in a CSS file. We don't need to specify tags. The moment we code it .css means that we have set it as a style sheet. So instead of having this like this, I can put a link now to this. Okay, so once I put a link like this, this is a link tag. It will tell me what type of link. This is a text/CSS, and it's a style sheet. So the href will tell me where to find the style. Now, before I put the href here, because I've deleted the styles, you will notice that the styles are gone for those boxes. However, if now I link this file which has the styling for these things, then it will work. So this file is called style.css, like that. And if I refresh, you see that everything is back to normal, although the styles are in a different file entirely. So I can continue adding classes here that I can come and use here on each element that I want as a class. Now beware that sometimes while you are testing, you find that you create some styles and then you go back to try and change things, and you try to refresh your page and find that things are not changing. Now the reason that could happen is the browsers, in order to save data, they cache these files. So this is one advantage of using an external file. Actually, what it does is, if your users are loading the website quite a bit, it's going to load the style file, because the style file doesn't change over the course of the user browsing. So what the browser will do is it will download it once and keep it on the computer, so that even though you're loading different pages, you can still use the same style sheet, which will reduce the amount of data that a user is using, because this big file of styles will just be downloaded once. Now that can be a problem if you are testing your website, because you find that you change something in the style file, but because it's cached, it's saved in your browser, it won't reload the style file. So you find that the new styles that you've changed to do not show up until it releases that saved version to try and grab a new one. So you can force it to refresh or delete the cached version by just pretending that this is a different file name. Because if now I add, instead of just style, I add style1 like this, then it will be forced to reload this page because it hasn't really loaded style1.css. It has loaded style.css but not style1. The only disadvantage to this is it means I have to change my actual file name to suit this. So this is ridiculous. So instead what we'll do is we'll put a question mark at the end here, because the way browsers work is that if you put a question mark, whatever comes after the question mark is considered parameters. So it doesn't count as a different file. It's just the same file with different attributes here. So if I put a question mark and put any text here, it could be a number, it could be a letter, it could be several letters, it could be several numbers. It's just a random value. So I can put just something like 1. Once I do this, this will be considered a different file, even though it's still the same file. And so it will be forced to refresh everything. So just to keep in mind, if you find yourself struggling and the styles do not show up here, it may have been cached. And then once you use this for a while and change things, this will also get cached. So you can change the number to 2 or any other random number once in a while. Whenever you see that things are not refreshing, just go and change that number so that things can reload again. Okay, so hopefully you have learned something about styles here. In order to know what styles are possible here, you can always Google HTML styles or CSS styles and so on, and then it will tell you. But you will see how we use the styling knowledge to create a page like this much later in a later video. So with that in mind, we have passed the introduction to CSS, and let's go down and talk about tables in the next video.